In 1924, a company called Western Electric owned a factory outside Chicago. It made telephone equipment. It employed 40,000 people. It was enormous and ordinary, and no one thought much about it. Then a group of researchers arrived, and they had a simple idea. They would dim the lights and see what happened to the workers. So they brought in a small group, sat them at a bench, and the researchers watched. Output went up. The researchers nodded, made notes. Better lighting, they wrote, better performance. So they raised the lights higher. Output went up again. Then, as a control, they lowered the lights back down, below where they started. Output still rose. The researchers sat with their data for a long time. They tried everything. More breaks, fewer breaks, different shift lengths, changed the temperature. Every single time, output went up, regardless of what they changed. Something was wrong with the experiment, or something was wrong with everything they thought they understood about people. The workers knew they were being watched. That's the whole story, right there. That's the piece they missed. The researchers had been measuring the wrong variable for 3 years. It wasn't the light. It was never the light. It was the eye. The workers performed because they were observed, even when the observer wasn't there anymore, even when the conditions got worse. The researchers called it a flaw, a contamination of the data. They wanted to throw the results out, but one man looked at the flaw and saw something else entirely. He saw a map. He saw that if you place a human being under observation, something in them shifts, something ancient and automatic. They straighten, they try, they perform the version of themselves they want seen, not because they're dishonest, because they're human, because being watched is one of the oldest pressures our species has ever known. You are not exempt from this. Something is changing you right now, and it is not the light. Think about the last time you knew someone was watching. A supervisor, a camera, a comment section. Did you feel it? That slight recalibration, the posture, the effort, the curated version of the work. Every variable they changed, light, temperature, rest, routine, output climbed, because the variable they never changed was the audience. Here is the thing about the Hawthorne effect that nobody wants to hold for too long. It means we don't actually know what we're like. Not really. Not without the eye. Because we have never, in our entire recorded history, been studied without knowing it. And so we have been performing. For the clipboard, for the manager, for the approval, for the feed. The factory floor changed. The clipboard became a screen. The researcher became a follower count. But the mechanism is identical. The same factory, the same bench, a century later. In your pocket right now is the most efficient observation instrument ever built, and it never turns off. 40,000 workers became billions of workers. The bench became every room in every building in every city on Earth. We scaled the Hawthorne factory to the size of civilization, and we are all still working for the eye. Elton Mayo, the man who led the original study, spent years trying to explain what he'd found. He never fully could, because the answer pointed at something no one wanted to name. What are you like when no one is watching? Not the curated version, not the performing version, the one that exists in the dark, alone, with no audience. Do you even know that person anymore? Let's stay with that question for a moment, because somewhere tonight, in a building like this one, a person is alone in their apartment. The door is locked, the curtains are drawn, no one is coming over, and they are still performing. The clipboard did not disappear, it just changed shape. They stand differently in front of the bathroom mirror than they do in front of no one. They walk differently when they suspect a camera might be pointed at the street. They eat differently when they think someone might see the plate. The mechanism is the same. The bench is everywhere now. The heart button is the new clipboard. The like is the new productivity metric. And somewhere right now a person is checking it, the way the workers once glanced at the researcher's face to read whether they were doing enough. Output climbed. The line keeps climbing. We call it engagement. We cook for the eye. We run for the eye. We grieve sometimes for the eye. You have been observed every single day for the last decade, possibly longer. And if you're honest, truly honest, you behave differently because of it. We built a gallery of our best moments and called it a personality. When no one is watching, we eat standing over the sink. When someone might be watching, we set the table. Nothing changed except the audience. We move through the world trailing a ghost of who we think we look like. Your employer is watching the hours, the algorithm is watching the scroll, the followers are watching the frame, and the data moves in a loop. What you do shapes what you're shown, which shapes what you do. And somewhere in that loop, the original self got very quiet. Elton Mayo found this in a factory in 1924 and called it a flaw in the data. Someone else looked at it and called it a blueprint. 100 years later, we built the blueprint at civilizational scale. We perform our health. We perform our happiness. We perform our grief at the appropriate volume. And sometimes we sit down mid-stride because we genuinely cannot locate the version of ourselves that exists outside the performance. Then, one notification arrives. Someone liked it, and the scientist with the clipboard is back, standing behind your shoulder, in a century where he was supposed to be gone. We have 9 versions of ourselves running simultaneously for 9 different audiences, and we manage them like shifts. We have forgotten what it felt like to simply be in a room without adjusting for the room. We have turned off the overhead light and called it privacy, but the phone is still on. And eventually, this is the part that should stop you. Eventually, you don't need the phone anymore. The observer moves inside. You carry them with you, into the empty room, into the shower, into the thought you haven't spoken yet. You perform for yourself now, for the internalized I that never agreed to leave. There is no room in this experiment where you are not the subject. The unobserved version of you exists somewhere, but you haven't been alone with it in a very long time. This is what the mouthless face knows, that it has been watched so long it has forgotten how to speak without an audience. Every window in every city is transmitting. The signal goes up, and the self goes with it. The workers went home in 1924. The shift ended. They left the factory, and the researchers stayed behind. You never leave. Every hour you accumulate more observation. It piles in the bottom of the glass, and there is no mechanism to pour it out. Even the reflection performs. The reflex is faster than the thought now. The light was never the variable. The I was always the variable. It was always only ever the I. The question Elton Mayo never thought to ask was whether a human being, observed without interruption from birth, could still locate an authentic self at all, or whether the candle, burning long enough for an audience, eventually forgets it ever burned alone. Let's talk about right now, not the factory, not 1924, this room, this moment, you. You are on the other side of a screen right now, which means the screen is on the other side of you. And something in you, something very old and very fast, has already registered that. How are you sitting? Check. Right now. Check how you're sitting. The researcher is behind your shoulder. He has always been behind your shoulder. You just stopped seeing him. The phone in your hand catches your reflection more often than you think. You adjusted, didn't you? Not because you're vain, not because you're weak, because you're human. And being human means the I changes everything. Elton Mayo built a factory experiment. Someone else scaled it to a civilization. And here we are, 40,000 workers multiplied by billions, performing in every room in every city on Earth. The experiment never ended. Now close your eyes for a moment, or don't. Either way, notice what choosing felt like. Notice what it feels like to turn the screen down. Notice what the body does when it believes, even briefly, that no one is watching. There is a version of you that exists in that space, the unmanaged one, the one that doesn't know its angle. Elton Mayo never asked the right question. He found the mechanism, named the effect, and moved on. He measured the output and forgot to ask what the output cost. He never sat with the question of what it means to spend a life performing. What is left when the observer leaves? That question has been written and rewritten for 100 years, and no one has been brave enough to answer it out loud. Here is what the data actually shows. When the observer leaves, when the clipboard is gone, the screen dark, the audience offline, the work continues. Differently, slower sometimes, more irregular, less optimized, more true. There is a door that has no label, and it has always been slightly open. The observer can be dismissed, not easily, not permanently, but it can be done. The internalized scientist is not a permanent resident. It is a habit, and habits can be interrupted. It takes practice. It takes the deliberate and slightly awkward act of doing something with no audience in mind, eating the meal without photographing it, walking the route no one will ever know you walked, thinking the thought you will never post, sitting under a tree with no caption, being, for a moment, unwitnessed. The light was never the point. It was always only ever whether someone was watching, and you are allowed to draw a circle around yourself that the clipboard cannot enter. You are allowed to eat badly and alone and in peace. You are allowed to move through the world without managing how you appear to move through the world. Authenticity is not a performance of authenticity. The moment you begin performing it, you have already lost it. This is the cruelest part of the trap. The exit is small and unremarkable. It does not look like an exit. It looks like a candle burning in an empty room with no one watching. The factory was real. The bench is real. The eye is real. None of this is metaphor. But Elton Mayo kept writing after the experiment. He kept asking. He did not let the finding be the final word. And neither should you. Knowing the experiment does not free you from it. The observer is still there. The mechanism is still running. This video has not cured you. Nothing will. But you can see it now. And the unperformed self, the dotted line ghost you've been carrying alongside you, becomes a little more solid every time you acknowledge it. The path is not straight. It doubles back. It is not a program or a practice or a morning routine. It is just the occasional, deliberate, unobserved act. A note you write for no one. A conversation you don't repeat. A moment you refuse to make content. But it is worth asking, once, quietly, without posting the question. You don't have to do it alone. 2 candles burn fine without an audience. The unobserved life is not a solitary sentence. It is just a direction, small and unglamorous and yours. The Hawthorne effect, identified in 1924, named in the 1950s, still running, in your pocket, in your posture, in the slight recalibration you made 3 minutes ago when you realized you were being watched. When was the last time you were truly unobserved? Not away from people, truly unobserved, even by yourself. Think about it, and tell me below.